Welcome back to the King Films College Basketball Weekend Weekly Predictions video. This is the 6th week of predictions. Let's get right into it with a recap of last week. So we had another successful week on the locks, going 3-2, but the game predictions were the worst they've ever been. Take a look at that right column where we went 8-8 at 500. So at least we weren't below 500. There were a lot of upsets, and I predicted mostly favorites this week. But it is worth noting that we are up 5 units total on the locks, so we're hitting at about 58% this year, so that's definitely making money at Vegas. So we're hoping for a better week this week for the game predictions. Let's get right into it with the locks, and starting with St. John's and Providence. St. John's has wins over Villanova and UConn. They just got that win over Villanova. Julian Champagnie is a great player on this team, brother of the Champagnie on Pitt. We'll get to them later. Providence has good wins over TCU and Seton Hall. David Duke, of course, averages almost 20 points a game and has been great for them. But Providence has come into a slump as of late, so give me St. John's to cover the pick'em spread and win the game, of course. Now we've got Wisconsin and Illinois in a big one in the Big Ten. Illinois has wins over Minnesota, Iowa, Purdue, and Indiana twice. Both Indiana games were close for them. They've got Ayo Dosunmu, Kofi Cockburn, and a whole supporting cast that this team is just stacked with. They know that they had a close win, kind of sketchy, going to overtime in Bloomington earlier this week. So I think they're going to bring it against a Wisconsin team that is reeling. And Wisconsin has wins over Louisville, Indiana, and Rutgers. And they've got Trice, Potter, and Davidson. But I don't think it's going to be enough to hang with Illinois. Give me Illinois to cover 2.5 at home. Next, we've got an outrageous spread here at 12 points in favor of Virginia. Pittsburgh has wins over Syracuse twice and Virginia Tech. Champagnie, as I was saying, is the second leading ACC scorer, so we've got both Champagnie brothers as locks. Whereas Virginia has wins over Syracuse and Clemson. They've got Kihei Clark, Huff, and Hauser. But I still think this Virginia team is quite overrated. We saw it last week when they lost to Virginia Tech, who in turn lost earlier this week. So I think Pittsburgh will definitely cover the spread. I have them winning. If you had them winning, you could get a great value at the money line, but definitely to cover the plus 12 spread. Next, we've got Texas and Oklahoma State. So Oklahoma State has wins over Kansas, Texas Tech, and Arkansas. They've got Cunningham and Likely. Coming off an L to TCU, they've lost to TCU twice this season, both by heartbreaking fashion. And Texas has huge wins over Kansas and West Virginia, but they are coming off 2 straight losses of their own, the first to Oklahoma and the most recent to Baylor on, I believe, Monday. So both teams are looking to bounce back, and I think Texas will do it here. This one is a little bit scary for me because Oklahoma State tends to play good teams well at home, and they're not as good of a road team, but I still have Texas to cover what I believe is a favorable -2 spread. Next up, we've got Tennessee and Kentucky. Tennessee has multiple good wins, including one over Missouri. They got a win over Kansas last week. They've got Pons and Bailey, but they did choke one up earlier this week to Ole Miss, and they're capable of doing it again, quite frankly, to a Kentucky team that's been up and down all season, but is coming off a close loss to Missouri. So both teams will definitely be pumped up for this game. That being said, I still have Tennessee as the better team here. Give me them to cover the -3 spread. Next up, we've got aforementioned Kansas against West Virginia. Kansas has the win over West Virginia the first time, as well as wins over Texas Tech, Creighton, and TCU twice, as well as Oklahoma. Great resume for this team, but they do have 6 losses. They've got Agbaji, Wilson, and Braun, and I think that both of the teams in this matchup are overrated. But I will note that West Virginia plays very well at home. They have wins over Texas Tech, VCU, Oklahoma State, and Western Kentucky. Again, both teams I think here are overrated. West Virginia tends to play better at home, played Texas to a 2-point game at home, played Florida very well at home, even though some thought they should have won that. I didn't really think so, but I think that Kansas is worse than Florida, especially on the road here. so give me West Virginia to cover the -1 point spread. And you might be wondering why this Seton Hall and UConn game. To be honest, it's just another pick, but I will give you another lock for tonight in Cal State Bakersfield +6.5 over UC Irvine. They have played one transitive game out of conference. That was to Pepperdine. Bakersfield won that against Pepperdine, whereas UC Irvine lost. UC Irvine is the top seed in the WAC right now, so it would not surprise me if Bakersfield won outright, but give me them to cover the 6.5 point spread. Moving on to this Seton Hall and UConn game. UConn only has a win over USC, to be honest, with their good wins, and both of these teams, I will note, need a win. UConn has lost their last 2 out of 3, whereas Seton Hall has lost their last 3 out of 4, and they've got a win over Xavier. So both of these teams don't have great resumes. Give me UConn to win, but Seton Hall has been playing better as of late. They have had a grueling schedule, so even though they've lost 3 of 4, it's been grueling games. Villanova twice, Creighton, etc. So give me UConn here, but I'm not picking it as a lock because I think Seton Hall is too dangerous here. Moving on to the other notable games, we'll start with Syracuse and Clemson in the ACC. Syracuse has a win over Virginia Tech, but not really much else on the resume. They've got up to 10 wins, so that's good on them. So they're solidly in the tournament. Whereas Clemson has finally started to find their groove after the wheels fell off a couple weeks ago. And I think it's because they're a way better team at home than away. So that's why I'm picking them here. They have a good resume that they built primarily early in the season with wins over Purdue, UNC, Alabama. Yeah, Alabama, that's right. That was a different Alabama team, to be honest, though. Louisville and Florida State. Again, better home team than away. Hammer Clemson here. Then we've got Alabama and Missouri. And Alabama's wins over Tennessee, Florida, Arkansas, and LSU twice. They shoot the 3 well. John Petty's a great player for this team. But I think that Missouri is going to win this game. Missouri has wins over Tennessee, Illinois, Oregon, TCU, and Arkansas. They're coming off a close win to Kentucky as well as a close win to TCU. But in that TCU game, they put up 100 points. So finally, this Missouri team has learned how to score. And if they can play defense and score, that might be the only team in the SEC that can beat Alabama. Of course, they lost to Oklahoma, but you can't really count that against them. Moving on to the next game, we've got Virginia Tech and Miami. Virginia Tech has wins over Villanova, Clemson, and Virginia. And I'm not sure if they have Radford or not for this game, but they have Cone, Aluma, and Elaney. And they're coming off a loss to Pitt, which is notable because in this last week there were a lot of upsets, but one of them was Virginia Tech. So I think they will respond in a good way here against a Miami team with wins over Purdue and Louisville, but a team I will note that is very dangerous. They have a lot of close losses early in the year, but I think that they are playing a little worse down the stretch here. Give me Virginia Tech to take this one in revenge fashion. Next, we've got St. Louis and St. Bonaventure, and St. Bonaventure has wins over VCU and Richmond, doesn't really have any non-conference wins to speak of, whereas St. Louis is a story that makes me pretty sad as they had about a month and a half off from COVID. They started out 7-1, but now have lost 3 out of 4, the first one being to Minnesota, and then 2 easy ones in conference. Easy, it sounds, but when you've had COVID issues for this long, it's hard to get back in there and play at a great style that they were playing with earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, they got wins over LSU and NC State, probably some of the best wins in the A-10, and they've got Javonte Perkins and Jordan Goodwin, and COVID issues have rattled both teams, but it rattled St. Bonaventure more in the out-of-conference, so that's why they have not really any good wins to speak of there. But give me St. Louis here. I think they've got to turn it around after 2 straight losses in conference against a tournament-bound St. Bonaventure team. St. Louis is on the edge of the field right now. Moving on to Creighton and Marquette. Creighton has wins over UConn twice, Xavier, St. John's twice, and they've got Mahoney. But they're coming off a loss to a Georgetown team that seems to be on the up and up right now as part of that Super Tuesday of upsets. Then we've got Marquette at 9-9 with wins over Creighton the first time, Wisconsin and St. John's. So that's a pretty good resume right there if they didn't have 9 losses. They've lost 3 out of 4. They're playing bad down the stretch here. Give me Creighton to take this one. Then we've got what some call a great matchup in North Carolina Duke. Obviously, it's got the rivalry appeal here, but North Carolina probably teetering on tournament hopes, and Duke doing the same. Duke's a bit lower, probably not even in the waiting list for the tournament at 7-6. Duke badly needs a win, and I think they'll get it. They've got Hurt, Stewart, and Johnson. I think both teams are pretty overrated, but Duke's coming off an L to Miami, and UNC's coming off an L to Clemson. They've got wins over Stanford. This is UNC. Syracuse and Pittsburgh. They've got Bacot, Brooks, and Love. But I don't think they're a good team. They always win close, and at Cameron Indoor, I think that's going to give Duke the edge they need to scrape out like a 1 or 2 point victory, as it always is in these rivalry games. Then we've got a couple out west. We've got UCLA and USC. UCLA has wins over Colorado and Arizona. They've got Tiger Campbell, Johnny Juzang, Jaime Jaquez, and Cody Riley. But they're not actually that good, as I noted a couple weeks ago when they played Stanford. They scraped out a lot of close wins and finally did lose their first non-conference game to Stanford there. USC's done a bit of the same. They don't really take every game down to the wire like UCLA does, but they do have good wins over BYU, Arizona, and Stanford. They've got Evan and Isaiah Mobley, Taj Edey, and Drew Peterson for them, and I think they're going to take this one at home. USC probably should be ranked in the AP top 25, getting a win off Stanford this week. So the winner here definitely goes into the top 25, and if it is USC like I have, both teams should probably stay there because this is UCLA's only game of the week. Moving on to the final game, we've got Arizona and Colorado. And both teams here, surprisingly enough, are coming off losses to Utah. Colorado did not get to play on Thursday because Arizona State is dealing with some sort of COVID issues. Colorado's got wins over Oregon, Stanford, and USC. They've got McKinley Wright and Evan Batty, but they have fallen off down the stretch, losing to Utah and Washington, who are horrible teams. And this is just putting punctures in their tournament resume, where Colorado really has a good net ranking. Arizona has a win over Colorado so far, but that's their only win. They kind of just keep afloat by beating the bad Pac-12 competition, so they're probably like the 4th, 5th, 6th best team in the Pac-12. They've got Akinjo, and as I mentioned, coming off a loss to Utah. Colorado needs to win this one, and I think their coach will emphasize that, and I think they will take it. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe.